Now, I'm from Northern Ireland, and some of my friends in the US probably think that people in Ireland just eat potatoes all day. Well, we do, and potatoes are great, so shut up, alright? Another silly misconception is thinking that all we do is drink.
Let's begin with a really common thought. Americans are ignorant about the world. Americans are held to an unrealistic standard. Since the rest of the world watch our movies and listen to our music, they know a lot about our country. But let's be honest.
Not really, though.
Studied it.
True.
People actually complain that Americans don't even know that Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore.
I also didn't know that.
But neither does half the United Kingdom, and they're on the same continent. It turns out that all of us are pretty bad at geography. You'd think America would be better at it, however, considering another common thought is that America spends its days spying on everyone. And that's true, but who doesn't? Germany, France, Switzerland, Japan, Iceland, and all the rest of us spy on each other and ourselves.
Yeah.
Moving on, America has been called racist. Please don't take this the wrong way. Racism definitely exists.
Everywhere.
And it makes the news. But you know what else? America also has a vicious media, and all of the world watches it. Sometimes more than their own media.
Yep.
So when something super bad happens in other countries, it might not even make the back page.
Exactly. I actually hate that, though. And you see it every single day. News stories get exaggerated simply because let's say, for example, front page story. And it's something that happens, right? Journalists in the US and the UK and well, I would just say those two places because, like he just said, their countries, it's not really as big as of a deal. The more brutal a headline is, and the more brutal a title is, the more clicks it's going to get, the more money people are going to spend on newspapers, on, everything to get their hands on that article to read. So it's just about exaggeration, and in the US and the UK, you see it every single day with everything.
Americans don't use public transport. While it's true that we use cars a lot, many regions in America have great public transport. Or at least just as good as Europe. Besides, what good is a train if nobody can afford it? We're looking at you, UK.
What do you mean?
Moving on. America does /has /is fill in the blank. America is far from being a unified entity. Each state has its own laws, cultures, and quirks. Some states have the death penalty. Some don't. Some have...
What? Wait a minute. Some states still have the death penalty? I did not know. Oh God. What states? What states have the death penalty? Can somebody explain to me, please?
Strict gun laws, and some don't. Some have free college. Some don't. Some have tax, and yeah, some don't. So just like you can't say Europe is so-and-so, you can't say the same about the US. As an additional note, the states are far more independent than many of us realize. In fact, every state even has its own military, known as the Guard. Furthermore, some states pass legislation that directly contradicts the federal government. This is because in the US, the federal government is not the highest authority, the states are. To further establish...
Wait, so the federal government that I think is the be-all end-all of the US isn't actually tippity-top? The states are. The state's own independent government are in more control of their state than the actual government that governs America is. My head's gone.
The fact that America isn't a single entity, many believe that Americans only speak one language. But that's no different from the rest of the world. Have you ever been to France? Or the UK? Or Italy? Or how about China? Most of them only speak one language too. That being said, over 20% of the US is bilingual. Now, let's talk about the military, because people outside the US will
I actually kind of understand that.
America's military does...
Because like in the South, when you're going towards like South America, I'm assuming that's probably where you get that 20%, right? Also, just to take a quick commercial break, this video is sponsored by me. I stream on Twitch, and I've left a link in the pinned comment if you guys want to come along to Twitch. I'm going to be reacting to a lot of these videos on there from now on in, playing some games with the community. And we have a bunch of fun on there, so if that's tickles your pickle. That was a weird thing to say, but if it does...
Because people outside the US will preach that America's military does, again, fill in the blank. Nobody is naive enough to think that the US doesn't have selfish interests in mind when it invades a country.
What country doesn't, though? Every country has to. There's no way a military from a country A invades a country if they're absolutely no way they're not getting any benefit of it, though, right?
Nation on Earth that would do that selflessly.
Yeah.
But whenever the bad goes down, it's just as common for other countries to complain that America should do something.
Mm-hmm. True.
On a more or less lighter note.
Don't say it. He's gonna say something. He's gonna say a pun.
Americans are fat.
Okay.
You ever been to the UK?
Hey, it was on everybody's mind. Don't even lie. If you're watching this right now, it was on your mind that it would probably be on my mind, wasn't it? Right? It was on my mind. I'll be honest. Hey, everyone's fat. Not everyone, but every country has fat people. It's just because America is a large country. No pun intended. It has more people to be fat. Does that make sense?
There are even scandals because obese patients are getting turned down for surgery. Yes, America does have an obesity problem.
Hey, you work it, brother.
But not all citizens are involved in it. I am. A big part of the United States is fairly health conscious and is consistently working to help the overweight population better their lives. Thanks, healthy people. And while we aren't perfect, many complain that America is worse than other developed nations in, well, everything. There are many statistics, child mortality, literacy, etc., where the US falls behind countries like Norway and Iceland. But those statistics...
Right, so let me just talk about this again, right? He's just compared it to Norway and, was it Denmark or something? But does the quantity of the population have to come into it, though? Because surely when you compare a country to another country and you're comparing, like, how many kids or whatever, surely the population is going to bring that number down because there's more people to be worse at something? Or is it like per 100 people, that's how they're doing the comparisons? Because in my head, it's because America is such a large fucking place. Of course, there's going to be a lot of shit, There's also going to be a lot of good, a lot of great.
Are based on averages. In Norway, most of the 5 million inhabitants are rich, white, and Norwegian. If you took a similar sample of rich white Americans in the US, you would find that the statistics are almost exactly the same. The fact is that the US is hugely diverse, and the American experience is completely different with and without money. Translation? The problem isn't healthcare or education, it's economic inequality, almost exclusively. And speaking of inequality, many make the simple but powerful assumption that America just isn't safe. This is usually what foreign citizens say until they actually come here. By this same logic, Paris, Brussels, London, Madrid, and almost every other city in Europe is unsafe as well. Yes, there are guns.
True.
But most Americans have never seen or heard a gun being fired.
I mean, in the past 2 weeks, this is serious. In the UK, there was a 14-year-old boy that got killed by a man with a machete or sword on his way home from school. 2 days ago, a police officer got chased down the road by a fella with a chainsaw.
In fact, most Swiss citizens are much more familiar with gunfire than us Americans. All this being said so far, people still expect all Americans to relish in a life of our stereotypes. Guns, fast food, and freedom! What I'm saying is, a lot of the world looks at America as overly patriotic. But here's an honest question. Have you ever met a Russian, Australian, a proud member of the UK? There's no shame in having pride in your country. Us Americans are definitely patriotic, but so is the rest of the world, as they should be. It's not a crime to be proud of where you came from. But that doesn't stop others from thinking we only complain and boast about America whenever we travel abroad. This is largely anecdotal. In America, Americans like to complain just like the rest of us. Only a few of them ever even leave the country, so you're meeting an unrepresentative sample.
I always find it weird whenever the Americans come to like Europe. It always, in my head, when I hear of like American going to like Barcelona or something, in my head that's just really weird, or like Ibiza. Because I feel like those type of places are just places people in the UK and around Spain kind of go to get away for a few days. Because from America, like, to go to Ibiza, and I'm saying Ibiza because I seen somebody on Twitter going there like last week or something. It's kind of crazy. That's such a fucking long distance. And it also brings me back to like probably nicer places in and around like the Bahamas than Ibiza. Ibiza, honestly, if you're ever thinking of going, don't. It's a shithole. Okay? Absolute shithole, stinks of sick.
But in their defense, many times, they're right. Yes, this can hit hard in the pride spot, but maybe Europeans could stand to smile a bit more, right? No?
Definitely.
Okay, fine. Back to the apathetic, leave me alone face. By the way, that part was written for our European representative. By our European representative. I love all of you. Anyways, statistics viewed by outsiders show that the U.S. is lagging behind. Similar to topics we've already discussed, there's another factor that we have to take into account. Reporting. Every nation reports its own statistics. This means that making statistical comparisons between two developed nations, like the US and the UK, is an exercise in futility. The data is just too close and won't reveal much except that the US counts people one way and the US counts them another. That still doesn't make this misconception true. Americans are fake. Here's the thing. In Europe, citizens are almost proud of the fact that they're really standoffish. But once you get to know them, they're your friend for life. Well, here's a newsflash. Once you get to know an American, they'll also be your friend for life. The thing is, though, they don't use this as an excuse to be a jerk in the beginning. This list sounds great.
Yeah, I really understand that, actually.
I was totally the one who should have read this one. But
that's actually so true, you know. That's so true. And I'm giving an example as to where I'm from. See, in Belfast, people are like, genuinely, not everyone. A lot of people are rude until you actually get to know them. Then they're your friend for life. I get that. That's a good one. I like that.
I digress. On a totally different but very popular misconception, Americans are the only ones who call football soccer.
True. False.
Actually, a lot of the world calls it soccer.
Very false.
Even parts of Ireland still call it soccer.
True.
Oh, what do I mean by still? I'm glad you asked. It was actually the British who coined the term soccer.
What?
The word soccer is an abbreviation of association and first appeared in universities in the 1880s, sometimes using the variant spelled soccer with a K. The word is sometimes credited to Charles Redford Brown, an Oxford University student said to have been fond of shortened forms such as brekkers for breakfast and rugger for rugby football. Britain actually started using the word football in the late 20th century, possibly because people incorrectly saw it as an Americanism.
It's literally
this next one,
football,
Tristan
though.
Couldn't believe. Could you not?
No.
I'm learning something. To our American viewers, did you know that people in Europe make fun of you for using air conditioning? Why do they need it? Why don't they just leave the window open?
We do. That's false. We do not.
But here's why they might be joining us soon. During the 2003 European heatwave, 70,000 people died. This was in large part due to the fact that European homes and buildings are not typically equipped with air conditioning.
Did I die?
While they laugh at the Americans for this, hotter summers are going to force them to take appropriate measures, especially since children and the elderly are very susceptible. Again, I stand by mosquitoes. I'm not opening my window in the...
I don't understand why anyone would laugh at that. I mean, it's literally there to cool you down. What's funny about that? I don't understand why that would be funny. Why would anybody make fun of that? Like laughing at somebody for having a shower to clean yourself. Haha, you took a shower? I wouldn't do that. I would never wash.
In the summer. Winter, absolutely. Open windows. Moving into the top 9.
AC's a W, by the way. I would love to have AC.
Top 9. Many parts of the world accuse the United States of accounting for 25% of the world's carbon emissions. Not so nice. But it also accounts for 25% of the world's economic activity. The truth is that several nations, including countries like Canada, have higher per capita emissions than the US. Next, let's talk about how the world thinks Americans are ruining English. Actually, both British English and...
Yo, I'm sorry for pausing so much. I just have stuff to say. I actually really, I don't know, because I don't live in the US, so I don't know their slang and stuff, but oh my god, bro. I was in this thread on Twitter again, shockingly. That was literally like a bunch of people having a conversation, man, and I was literally just reading through them, and you would not believe some of the like replacement words that people use these days for just normal words. Like, English is gone, man. Slang is literally gonna... How many times am I gonna say literally? Slang is gonna be an actual language someday soon. Like, what do you speak? English? What do you speak? And they will They will say, you know, slang. I speak slang.
American English have diverged from a common 16th century ancestral standard, and in some ways, American English is closer to the original than British English.
I believe that.
For example, American English has, for the most part, retained the language's rotosity, pronunciation of the R in words like hard, while British
Hard.
has, for the most part, dropped it. Furthermore, this shift in British English happened around the time of the American Revolution when
Hard.
wealthier Londoners wanted to distinguish themselves from the lower classes. This is only one example, but it goes to show that British English is not an unchanging standard any more than American English. On a totally different note, did you know that Americans don't all live in the suburbs? Nope, not true. The fact is that in America, you have plenty of people that live in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and the list goes on. In fact, several regions of the United States are very European, like the Northeast Corridor, for example. The difference between the U.S. and Europe is that if you want to live in the suburbs in the U.S., you can, but you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this next one is just offensive. Americans are all dumb rednecks. While there are certainly Americans who fit this stereotype, the vast majority don't. Most Americans live in cities near the coasts. Most of them are educated. And most of them are not very different from Europeans in any...
This is a classic example of what I said earlier, that things get exaggerated, right? Because it's the US, it gets blown out of proportion. It's the same. People, redneck, whatever the fuck that even means. People are like that everywhere. I'm assuming like that's like farmers or something, is it? Like farmers with like, I don't know, man. But if it's what I think it is, then I know there's a lot of rednecks where I live. Everywhere, man.
Any significant way. Every country has a less educated populace that they themselves make fun of. Even sophisticated nations like Sweden.
Oh, so it's like less educated people? They're okay. Then Ireland's fucking filled with them.
Fair warning, the last 5 on our list get a bit dark and crazy.
Oh, shit.
Starting with the idea that America is imperialistic. In many parts of Europe, the United States is seen as an aggressive imperial power, even more so than Russia and China. This is largely because our military presence both in Europe and everywhere else. But in our strong defense, Americans never forced you to watch our movies, quarter our soldiers, obey our laws, or get permission to leave your own countries. It was the Russians that did that, and much, much more. Food for thought, after World War II, the Americans liberated and left. The Russians liberated and stayed. All right, number 4 is sure to be a shocker to a lot of foreigners. Americans don't actually all walk around with guns. It's just not true. Except for a few places, the only people you'll ever see carrying guns in America are the police. In fact, you'll see more people walking around with guns in Switzerland.
This might be a stupid question, right? Because I just don't know. Obviously, you have a license to own a gun in America, right? Does that permit you to carry them as well? Or do they have to be like in your home, in your private property, locked away? Or you just be like, you know, walk into the shop and you're allowed to like have a gun, but as long as you have your license, it's all good? Or nah? Let me know, because I genuinely don't know.
Than you ever would in America. Okay.
Next!
We admit that, like most stereotypes, there is some truth to this next one, but it's been wildly blown out of proportion. Americans are all crazy Christian right-wingers. There's something so right about saying it with that accent. Yes, there are a lot of Christians in America, and while some of them are crazy right-wingers, most of them aren't.
But again, you have to look at again, he's just said there's a lot of Christians, but that's also because there's a lot of people. The higher the population of a country, the more of kind of every type of person there's going to be, you know? Works both ways.
In fact, if you ever get a chance to go and stay with one of those crazy Christian families, you'll see that most of them are just genuinely sweet people that go to church on Sundays. This next one sounds like a legit stand-up joke. If you get injured and can't pay for it, you'll just die in the street. Yeah, many people in Europe think this is what happens in America.
I do,
As
to be
with
fair.
most things that concern America, they're wrong. You can't be denied.
I think he's about to say you can't be denied healthcare. I have a conception that if you can't pay, it sounds so stupid when you say it out loud. Like if I can't pay for my treatment, they ain't going to treat me. I have a broken leg, they're going to turn me away. That's what I would think.
You'll just die in the street. Yeah, many people in Europe think this is what happens in America. As with most things that concern America, they're wrong. You can't be denied emergency medical care in the US. That would go against the Hippocratic Oath. The difference is that you get a bill in the mail a few months later. Of course, debt is another issue, but let's get into that right now.
How big is the bill, though, for a broken leg?
Americans are all in debt. Actually, European citizens carry more debt than Americans. The average household debt in the US, OECD, is 113% of the household's income. In the UK, it's 156%. In Sweden, 173%. And in Denmark, it's a whopping 305%.
Jesus.
So, what are some misconceptions about the US that you'd like cleared up? Or do you live in America and want to put a stereotype to rest? Let us know in the comments.
I like that video. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, are there any conceptions or misconceptions you may have about where I am from? Because I would love to know, and I would love to answer them for like a future video and do something similar to what he just did. So hit me with some. Thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you really enjoyed it that much. And have yourself a good day. Peace.